All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Committee of the Whole meeting for Friday, December 12th, 2025. The TNRD acknowledges that we connect with many First Nations communities across our vast regional district, and today we are located on the Tk'emlúps-te-Secwépemc territory, situated within the unceded ancestral lands of the Secwépemc Nation. The TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with Tk'emlúps-te-Secwépemc, and we respect the territory and land on which we gather today. We have the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on October the 3rd. Director Getz, seconded by Vice Chair Smith. Are there any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Moving right along. 4.1, Detached Secondary Suites Zoning Bylaw Amendment. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. We'll just wait for the presentation to be loaded. If I get the clicker. Thank you. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Madam Chair, Committee of the Whole members. You've likely seen our names, but perhaps have not met us in person. We are Linda Perotti and my dear colleague here, Bobby Sangera. We're two of the planners in the Development Services Department. The first report in your agenda package today is a project we are seeking your approval to move forward with in 2026, which is to consider detached secondary suites on lots smaller than 4 hectares or 10 acres. We realize your agenda is quite packed today, so we just have a few slides to supplement the report, and then we'll go over any questions that you may have. So historically, additional dwellings or detached secondary dwellings were allowed on parcels larger than 8 hectares or 20 acres that had farm status. As many of you recall, the zoning bylaw was changed in 2022 to allow an additional detached dwelling on parcels 4 hectares or larger, regardless of farming activity or farming status. This amendment offered much more flexibility, and since then, we've processed about 60 applications for additional dwellings. And we also filter many, many more questions regarding additional dwellings on lots smaller than 4 hectares. During our official community plan open houses, many conversations centered around housing options to help families age in place, or help family have a starter home while maintaining independence, or simply to offer another housing option. This concept also ties into Bill 44, which was essentially to increase housing supply with smaller, more affordable homes. So our zoning bylaw has actually allowed duplexes or houses with secondary suites since the inception of zoning in the early 1970s, making us ahead of the curve with housing options. Right now, additional dwellings are allowed in certain rural residential zones on parcels 10 acres or larger, and they're limited to 90 square meters or 968 square feet in floor area, or 186 meters, which is about 2,000 square feet in floor area, depending on the size of the lot and the ALR status. However, as I mentioned, in recent years, many still are questioning why dwelling units must be in a duplex or why they must be limited to a suite inside a house. Why can't they be separated? We began discussing this idea internally and looking at provincial standards regarding servicing and found it may in fact be possible to accommodate 2 detached dwellings on parcels as small as 1 hectare, which is about 2.5 acres. Our initial thought with this project is to expand housing options on lots 1 hectare to 3.99 hectares by allowing the secondary suite or half of a duplex to be its own detached building. Initial research has indicated that 1 hectare is the guideline that Interior Health recommends for 2 detached dwellings, as 1 hectare may provide enough space to accommodate the primary sewage disposal system, a backup field area if needed, and maintain appropriate distances between septic areas and water sources. I'm now going to turn it over to Bobby, who will talk about other considerations and the next step.
Beautiful. Thank you, Linda. Once again, we are exploring the possibility of permitting detached secondary suites in residential zones, specifically in CR1, LR1, and R1, provided that the lot size is at least 1 hectare or 2.5 hectares in size. Comprehensive development zones such as Tobiano will not be affected by this change, as they are unique, site-specific planned communities. To be clear, the density on those parcels affected by this change will remain the same, 2 dwelling units per parcel. But the built form of these dwelling units could change. You could have 2 dwelling units in 2 detached buildings. While we are proposing to allow detached secondary suites in most residential zones, this does not necessarily mean that we will see them everywhere. Staff recognize various physical and infrastructural constraints that may limit where or even whether these dwellings can be located on a property. For example, some properties may not have the capacity to expand their private water source, a concern that we heard repeated in many of our OCP open houses for upcoming OCPs. Other physical constraints, such as properties being in the floodplain, riparian areas, geotechnical limitations, and archaeological sites, may affect the buildable area for these smaller lots, and in turn, the feasibility of introducing a detached secondary suite on a property. While the density of residentially zoned parcels will not change, there may be impacts on the built form and the character of these areas. Over the years, we have heard from the public on the importance of keeping rural areas rural. Some have concerns about increased density, some have concerns about a rural identity, others about heightened traffic. Staff's goal with this proposal is to find a balance between preserving the rural character and offering additional housing options for residents in the TNRD. So what's next? If staff receive direction from this committee to bring this proposal before the board of directors, we will draft a bylaw for first reading. Following first reading, we will implement a communication strategy to notify the public and hear from them regarding the proposed changes. Following public consultation, the proposal will be brought back to the board for second reading, which may be modified based on public feedback. Staff ultimately believe that these changes will have a positive impact on most smaller residential parcels and directly address feedback from our OCP meetings and common inquiries. However, some questions still remain, particularly whether to limit the size of these detached secondary suites, especially on smaller lots. For instance, should a detached secondary suite on a 1 hectare, 2.5 acre lot be the same size as one on a 4 hectare, 10 acre lot? We are seeking this committee's input and feedback on this question, as well as any other ideas or suggestions that you might have. Thank you for allowing us to have the opportunity to bring this proposal forward, and we look forward to questions and discussion on this matter.
Thank you for that awesome presentation, which is a perfect lesson in how to use a PowerPoint to augment a written report, not just put the written report up on the screen. So thank you so much for that. All right, over to the board. Who has any questions? Director Grenier is first, and Director Middleton. Director Grenier and Director O'Reilly.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. It's exciting to see that we are responding to some of the constituents, particularly in my area in Cherry Creek, where people are trying to make this happen. There's a couple considerations that I think are warranted. In unprotected fire areas, the fire setback on the side yard basically doubles because there is no response, and basically they want separation between houses and lots. And as you talked about, as we get smaller and we add more units, we're getting closer to neighbors. So the two issues, the fire separation and then the privacy separation, I think will be important as you go down to one hectare areas and then a larger secondary suite. So that would be somewhat of a concern, I think, that people would express. The second is the septic fields. I think we have to assume that septic fields will fail. And when they fail, they're not easily replaced in the location where the failure takes place. So it seems to me that we should be saying, one of the conditions is that you can accommodate 2 septic fields, the current septic field, and then a future septic field. So that if there's any questions about septic failure, particularly adding additional unit, there is enough space to go to the second field. So those would be some comments for your consideration.
Excellent. Thank you through to the chair. We'll definitely take those into consideration and include that when we do our consultation with other agencies and the public.
Thank you. Next up, Director Middleton.
Thank you. Just wanting, and I couldn't see it, but maybe I've missed it, so I'm just ask, where does this fit in with short-term rentals and, the Airbnb, that type of platform? Are these second residences on these properties going to be used or be able to be used for short-term rentals? Or does the short-term rental policy specify enough that it has to be within an attached suite or unit? So just if could just
So no, that's a great
inquiry about that.
question,
Thanks.
and that's something that we can definitely include to be clear when we come to you next with more information. This does not include short-term rentals. So short-term rentals like Airbnbs are permitted in certain zones. But typically, and you may notice it, we like to do them through temporary use permits. So they are not approved right out in a detached dwelling or a basement suite unless it's a proprietor lives in the building and it's a bed and breakfast. But the short answer is no, short-term rentals will not be allowed in these detached suites unless they go through a development process.
Next, Director O'Reilly, then Director O'Toole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I want to start, I think it was Bobby had said, keeping rural. And to me, I do have a little bit of concern that will potentially change and what we love about rural being rural. And I'm just wondering, essentially to me, the way I'm looking at it, we're almost upzoning properties that have certain uses now, but we're allowing more uses for that. And so I'm just wondering, the conversations have you had about speculation in the fringe areas close to the municipalities that, hey, we're going to go to the TNRD because it's less taxes and it's rural, but we're going to add this secondary separate dwelling. And then also, I'm just wondering if a 2,000 square foot building really would be a secondary, given that's a pretty large footprint. So you're no longer the secondary unit, you're actually the principal, and the original is now the secondary. And I'm wondering where the line is for that and how you would change that, or do you change that? Thank you.
Yeah, that line is exactly what we're here for, is trying to figure out how big that secondary house should be. Keeping rural is absolutely something that is on everyone's mind. The density doesn't change on any of these parcels. So you still have the exact same, but you're right. The built character and the form of these communities may look different. And I think that's where we have to find a balance between, is it appropriate to allow the same regulations on 4 hectares and 1 hectare? Or do we want a base plate, or do we want it to go smaller? Is there a reason for it to go smaller? That's exactly what we're here for.
Thank you, Director O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. So I have quite a bit of firsthand experience with secondary suites, and there may not be an intention for this to become a nightly rental, but I can warn you now that it's going to be. So it's inevitable that people will seize the opportunity and they will look to find ways around the rules to create and I would also say that if you're going to call it secondary, as a layman, the word secondary, I'm assuming is smaller. And I kind of feel as Director O'Reilly that in our scenario, when we talk about secondary suites and Sun Peaks, we put limits on them, and typically it's square footage and it's the number of bedrooms, and it's considerably smaller than what the main residence. As an example, the main residence might be 3,000 square feet and 4 beds and 3 baths, but the secondary suite is a maximum of 2 and has a certain number of pillows in it. It's designed to be that, okay, you want your older relative to come and live with you in their, in their twilight of their life, that kind of thing, or a place for family to stay. It's not designed to recreate a second primary residence on the property. I did have a question. You talked about sewage capacity with the field water as well. Are these only happening on properties where they have their own self-contained water and sewer? Because as we know, the TNRD has a number of small water and sewer systems, sorry. Would someone have the ability to add this in an area where they were using a shared water and sewer system? And I ask that because now it's going to start putting pressure on that water and sewer system and impacting other residents who maybe don't have secondary suites, who now will see the need to increase capacity on that. So thank you.
Thank you for that question through the chair. That is something that we have been speaking about a lot through this process, and something that we will look into further should we get approval to proceed with this project. To build on your question on making sure the secondary suite is secondary to the principal dwelling, we talk about that a lot, and we also are cognizant that the septic capacity on a property may automatically limit how big the secondary detached dwelling could be, especially if they have to put in another system. Now, in electoral areas, yes, a property, if they are connected to a community sewer system or a community water system, they would be eligible for this if they meet the criteria. We haven't ironed out a lot of the criteria, but off the top of my head, you would have to be able to connect to an approved water system and an approved sewer system, whether it's a community system or a private system. So they would have to be able to connect to that. So I've also made some notes to make sure that we address that when we do our referrals to Interior Health, and make sure we loop them in on that as well.
Thank you, Director Getz.
In the city of Merritt, we had the situation with garden homes or lane homes. So I would suggest if you're looking for some information on that, we can give that to you, because that is not the same size as the house. It's based on a percentage. On TNRD in the city of Merritt, we have a water license agreement with the province. We have so much we can use, and we're at 75% of our water agreement. Does the TNRD have anything like that for these properties, or does that fall to the farm status of the farm as far as their water rights go? And that's a question you may not be able to answer.
I actually don't know the answer to that. I don't know if someone over here can help us.
So I was just wondering.
Through the chair, no. So private individual wells aren't regulated in terms of a number. Surface water licenses, an owner would get a certain volume. And yes, that is one of the main questions we're hearing with these OCP meetings as well, is we're hearing a lot of communities are running out of water. And so if we allow this density and they're sharing that same finite amount of, say, surface water license that they're pulling out of a river or a creek, how does that get split with multiple dwellings? But I think what we have to remember here, what we're talking about today, is they're already allowed to have a duplex. They're already allowed to have a secondary suite. We've allowed that since 1972. What we're hearing though is, can't we detach it? So in a way, it's if they've been using one well to service or could service a duplex, then what's the difference if they separate it rather than having it as a shared wall? But definitely, lack of water is a big concern. And that's why we've also went to the 1 hectare, because we have people on less than 1 hectare that are asking for 2 dwellings. But without community water, without community sewer, that's a lot harder. And if somebody really wanted that, they can still apply. But if they apply, they're going to have to show where they're getting their water from, and to have some kind of proof that they won't be impacting their neighbors, because often neighbors in the kind of a small lot neighborhood will all be sharing the same underground water source. So the more straws you put into that water source, eventually it'll dry up. So these are all the concerns that we're trying to find a balance with. But and the other thing maybe I'll just add as well, often we're getting these calls, and I know they're still getting built. So I would prefer that we have a mechanism that we can actually allow these, rather than saying no and ending up having them built unlawfully. So we're trying to find that balance.
Thank you, Director Laird.
Thank you, Chair. I had a discussion with our water district in Lower Nicola. It's not a TNRD water district. I have no ability to fund them at all. as far as supporting their water system. It's not allowed under the community building fund, which I find quite onerous, but I did have a conversation with them about adding more units to their existing water system. And the way they looked at it is, if you're adding another unit to an existing lot and the water system is already at that property, it gives them an opportunity to increase their user base with very little expense. And I asked them about water supply, and they said at this time we have no shortage of water, and that's what they're looking at, is if we allow the extra building on a lot, there is very little added cost to connect, and they get the extra revenue right away. So that's a very big bonus for our local water district. That was just my observation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple questions. I'm wondering about the Interior Health's 2.5 acres or 1 hectare. Is that like a hard and fast rule, or is that more of a guideline? Was one question.
Through to the chair. So this is our initial research. We have found it's a guideline. They will definitely be consulted with, should we go ahead with this project? But we found that quite a bit of documentation indicating the guideline is research from their end, and that other regional districts are seeming to apply this guideline as well.
Okay, thank you. And I'm also wondering if there's an opportunity maybe to specify that a secondary suite has to be for family, or, just to not have, to the point of a couple of the other directors keeping rural. I think we're going to see a lot of people that have a bigger piece of property that are going to then want to put multiple rental units potentially. And I think that could have the potential to disrupt the neighbors and the neighborhoods that they're in. So just a thought around that. And the other thing I'm wondering is about a percentage of the overall lot size in terms of coverage. So my comments, thank you.
No, thank you. Through to the chair, these are all comments that we will filter through and take consideration. Parcel coverage and a percentage is definitely something that we, as planners, do typically consider the smaller size of the lot. So thank you for reiterating that.
And just on the family piece there, I don't know if that's something that's, I don't know if even the rest of the board would agree with that, but it's just my comments, because I feel like I would feel much better knowing that my neighbor across the street on a rural piece of property is building a secondary home actually for, family for,
So through to the chair,
Anyway.
that's not something that we've discussed yet. And zoning typically zones the use, not necessarily the people that live on the property. There are certain exceptions, or, for example, short-term rentals. Some people may say, well, aren't you zoning the renter with short-term rentals? But short-term rentals are often considered more, or they can be considered more of a commercial use, especially if you're charging people to live there on a nightly basis. So that's not something that we have considered yet, limiting it to family members. And I'm not sure if that's something that we would be able to get away with zoning. Yeah, it's something we made a note about, but it is something that we will discuss more internally.
Thank you. I know it'd be tough to regulate, but that's one of those things.
I think it would be too, unless it was for like a medical service, which we have temporary dwellings for those already. But again, is that going to be something that you zone in perpetuity, even when they're no longer there? It gets so much more complex the deeper you go into it.
Thank you.
Director Smith?
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned that this subject has come up when you've been discussing OCPs with the communities that are in the development stage right now. So is this something that you're hearing very strongly from communities that are in the development stage right now, that they want this included in their OCP?
Through to the chair, yes, this is something that we have heard in certain areas that I'm already allowed to have 2 dwelling units. Why do they have to be in one building? So that's kind of what precipitated this conversation with us is the OCP meetings.
Okay, secondary, please. And you had up on the screen there zoning in LR1, which is Lakeshore Residential 1. But there would have to be a minimum of 1 hectare.
Correct.
If it's LR1, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that it automatically qualifies.
Correct. That's a very good point. With any of these zones we are proposing, it would have to be allowed use in the zone, and they would also have to meet the criteria that we would put forward. So right now, you can have additional dwellings on lots that are 10 acres or larger, but it's not an automatic given. There is additional criteria they have to follow. So we will apply similar criteria for lots this size as well.
Director O'Toole.
Thanks. Just to follow up through the chair. There was a comment earlier about potential percentages of the primary residence. I would caution to be careful there. I would go back to a more setting a cap, because if you have somebody with a 4,000 square foot home, it's pretty easy then if you set it as a percentage to now end up with what is essentially a primary residence on anybody else's property, right? So it's been our experience to cap it at the number of bedrooms. You also need to define what is a sleeping space, because people get really creative with what they call a sleeping space. And in our situation where you're talking about people trying to turn things into nightly rentals, legal and otherwise, you go into a unit and there's a bedroom that's typically got 2 pillows in it, and it has 2 full sets of bunk beds with 2 pillows on each bottom and a single pillow on each top. So all of a sudden now you've got 6 pillows in a room that would normally only have 2. So regardless of the size of the primary residence, I would go the angle of yes, I would cap square footage, but I wouldn't make it a percentage of the primary residence. I wouldn't let it go anywhere above 1,000 square feet, and even that would be extreme, I think. And I would cap the number of bedrooms, and I would define what is considered a sleeping space. Otherwise, you're going to run into a bunch of dens with egress windows, and all of a sudden it's a 4-bedroom unit, even though it's really only supposed to be a 2.
Thank you for your.
I've got Director O'Reilly, and then I've got Director Onslow, Director Thorpe, and Director Houghton and Laird. All right, Director O'Reilly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in my head as this is a real live conversation and there is no firm recommendation from staff, is potentially on the size being linked to a percentage of the principal dwelling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think through the chair, what I'm hearing 2 different things. We can either cap it at a square footage, so 950 square feet, 1,000 square feet, or we can cap it at a percentage of a house. Or I've also seen in other zoning bylaws that it can be a certain percentage of a house floor area to a maximum.
Up to, yeah.
Yeah.
And
to a
again,
maximum.
sorry, I see Director O'Toole pointing at me.
If you're going to put primary residence, because somebody might have a primary residence.
Can you do a microphone just for people listening online? Sorry, thank
The
you.
primary residence might be only 1,800 square feet. So now the percentage of the primary residence makes sense. But if the primary residence is 4,000 square feet, so you need to have a
Up
bit of
to,
both.
yeah, correct.
So it's a percentage of residence up to a maximum of.
That's exactly what I was thinking too. We have some of that language in some of our zones, maybe not necessarily with floor area, but with accessory buildings. So I have made a note of that. That's something we should be considering.
Thank you.
I have Directors Onslow, Thorpe, Houghton, Laird, and Middleton. Director Onslow. Director Onslow's good. Okay, Director Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering if we're missing something here too. Housing, as we know, is really, really expensive, and it's really hard for people to get into the market. There are situations where, say, two couples will buy a property. Now, have we considered this? Because if we've got two couples that buy a property, under current zoning, they would have to build one building that would house both couples. But if you're looking at a situation where you've got two houses, this is maybe something that needs to be factored in too. It's not always about family. It can be about partnerships too, and it allows them to each have individual homes.
Mhm.
Just a thought.
No, through the chair, thank you very much. I've made a note of that.
Director Houghton.
Yeah, I think every electoral area is different in this regard. Some are more rural than others, some are close to a major municipality, and some are, well away from a municipality. So there's quite a few different scenarios here. And I know as living in the country, we're getting pressure on these folks that have this land. And it doesn't seem to matter if it's somebody in Del Oro or somebody in Knutsford that has got this piece of ground and want to add another building on it to house somebody, because whether it be a family member or whatever. And I think I'm in favor of it because there's so much. I think if you take a drive around, just take a drive around the city of Kamloops, doesn't matter go what direction, and you see these buildings popping up on land, and I can guarantee you a lot of them have a building suite or have a residence inside of them if you went and opened the barn door up. So I think this would help cut down on the illegal stuff, and give somebody an option instead of doing the illegal trick that I know is happening everywhere. And I think if you put a size limit on it, because whether you go to Cherry Creek or go to Knutsford, somebody's got a real nice, big, huge home on a small acreage, like on Rose Hill Road. The next guy's got a single wide mobile home. So how are you going to define a size compared to what the size of the original home is? I think in the rural setting, you need to define the size of the unit max, whether it's beside a log home or a mobile home. And yes, water is very critical, where that's coming from, and sewer, depending on the size of the lot. So take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Through to the chair. This conversation is so useful for us because we're just here seeing if there is an appetite for this idea and if we should go ahead with this project in 2026. And all this information that we're getting today is super useful for our next step should we go ahead with it. So thank you very much.
You, Director Laird.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that a lot of the rural areas struggle with, and I think all of the EA directors areas do, is rental accommodations. And we hear about rental accommodations and affordable rental, and for instance, in my area, the only area that there's maybe one or two areas that actually have enough structure in water, sewer, roads, where you can add an extra building, whether it's for a family or whether it's for rental accommodation. I think that has to be determined because in most areas, there's always a rental shortage. And this gives an opportunity for rural areas to be able to address the shortage of rental, especially if you're close to Lower so close to Merritt. They use it as a bedroom community. And it would be help with the rental accommodations that are so short. So I think that's another thing we have to consider.
Director Middleton.
Thank you. And I don't know if it's sort of considered in this or we already have something in place that allows for it, but you could also have the scenario too where somebody has a larger piece of property, but with an existing very small home on it, perhaps an older home they bought with the property and as their primary residence. Is there ability for them to build a new residence any size they choose and designate what was the primary residence now as a secondary residence so that you're not getting that scenario where somebody has to tear down a house to build a new one. And so that perhaps that could just be a switch of designation of which home is which. I don't know if that's being considered or is
So
considered in this at all.
I can answer that with what we have now through to the chair. Yes, some on lots that are 10 acres, 4 hectares or larger, where you can have an additional dwelling, subject to criteria. Especially within the agricultural land reserve, we do sometimes find that there could be a principal dwelling that is, let's say, under 1,000 square feet, and they do want to build something bigger that would turn their existing dwelling into the secondary dwelling, and their new residence would be the principal residence. The ALC would consider the new dwelling the principal dwelling and then the small dwelling. So essentially they are switching. I'm not sure how that would take shape in this instance on smaller lots. I think it would be a little trickier, and I think we have to be more sensitive to that, especially the conversation that we've been having today around limits and keeping secondary dwellings secondary. So that's definitely something that we will talk about internally and run different scenarios. But to answer your question today, yes, sometimes, occasionally that can happen.
Director Grenier, and a last call for hands before, okay, Director Morris. Director Grenier, Director Morris, then Director O'Toole, and then I will ask someone to move the recommendation, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hearing a lot of excellent comments today. I just think we need to be generous on the ideas of size and scope of user. On size, we're not talking about a municipal 40 or 50-foot front lot that's a quarter of an acre or a third of an acre. We're talking about 2.5 acres to 10 acres. So where 1,000 square foot unit might be considered large on a smaller municipal lot, it isn't so large even on a 2.5 acre parcel. So I would respectfully not support 1,000-foot cap. And I would want to allow the owner of the land to make a proposal that seemed reasonable and then be constrained by limitations such as septic and side yard setback. It may not be a problem at all on a 10-acre lot, 1,000 or 2,000 acre secondary unit. The second thing is I want to talk about users. I happen to be in a situation where we have 5 adult kids, and one of our kids is a farrier, has grown up in a rural type setting, certainly is in a rural setting with horses and dogs and now kids. And I don't want to see them restricted to 1,000 square foot unit because we put a cap on it. And a lot of our kids are now looking, they have to rent in a municipality. They want to live in the rural, but they can't because they can't find accommodation that's big enough for their use. And use isn't just bedrooms, use is dogs, multiple dogs, horses, a rural style of life. So it may not be a municipal style of life, but it is a rural style of life. And sometimes space is required. You got muddy boots because you're coming in, you need a mudroom. You know, you out feeding the horses in the morning and in the afternoon, you're going to have a dirty area. So you need more space perhaps. So I would just say, let's be generous when we're talking about rural settings and already the issue of detached. We're simply allowing people who are trying to find a way to live their life, make it easier for them to live that way of life. So those are some comments for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Morris.
Thank you. And there's been some fabulous comments. And Director Grenier, particularly listening to you, just a very simple thing. The complexity, for example, the Shuswell Road situation, the complexity there is intriguing. And first thing that comes to mind to me is define family. What is family when you're sitting in that situation? And we have multiple examples of those, and we're going through an OCP process as well. In any case, I just, that's the big one, is essentially the 10-acre ones where we're looking at how does that define, and does the family define who gets to be part of that breakup, or those are the things that to me well, this is about my 3.5 year or whatever, that we still have not tackled or resolved, I think, I feel that we have come up with solutions and suggestions on how that's going to go. So very glad to see that this process has come to the fore again for the conversation. And it's going to be tricky, but that's what we're here to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Director O'Toole.
Thank you, Chair. Alex brought up a point earlier around the fact that these things are already happening and that putting an improved structure in place is about ensuring that they're being done in a proper way. And that is much, we had a unique scenario in Sun Peaks where we had a number of people had back in the day built properties with illegal suites. And we made the decision to go down the path of we needed to make sure they were safe. So we created a variance permit process that allowed them to bring those into legal standing by having them meet certain criteria. And I think as we look at this, because I think this is a great idea, don't get me wrong. I think that, as an example, there was a point made earlier about an older property and now somebody's going to build a suite. And I had spoken earlier about the fact when we're talking about community water and impact, there could be a mechanism here where somebody's building a secondary suite on a property, the primary residence is older, they're on a community water and septic where part of the requirements of building the secondary suite is to bring the primary residence fixtures and things up to a higher standard, because quite often you're going to go into those older rural homes and they're using 13-liter toilets and, high flow shower heads and everything else. And that can create an opportunity to kind of raise the bar for the whole property and lower the impact. If it's somebody working on their own sewage field and their own water supply, it probably doesn't matter. But in a shared scenario, there might be some value to that, to have some wording in there that says, if you're going to build that, we need to confirm that you've got a minimum standard in your primary residence as well, too.
Through to the chair, that's a very good comment. I don't know if we would have the mechanism to do that to an existing dwelling. It's something that I've noted and will look into. I'm not sure if Mr. Kraus can answer that right now, or if that's something that we may need to hash out a little further. But very, very good point.
Director Getz, you said you had a very tiny, teensy little point.
Yes, just to bring you up to date on the garden houses and sheds that we have, we allow them to either be family or bed and breakfast. We have no issues with that, and we've had no issues with that at all. If you build something for grandma moves in, everybody's happy. 6 months later, poof, she's gone. Now I'm sorry, but but it's true. So, so now you've put these people in this position now that they have to wrangle a family member into it. So, whether it's whatever. So we've allowed it to be bed and breakfast, and it's actually helped our downtown.
Okay.
Grandma won the lottery and she's moved to Puerto Vallarta. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I just want to say, I think we, and this is getting back to what Director Thorpe said, we have to be careful, I think, how we define things and family, because now we are restricting the Smiths build a house for grandma and grandpa, and then the Smiths sell the property and move, and the Browns move in. The Browns might not have any family members who want to live in a secondary house, but does that mean it now has to sit empty until someone buys the property and moves family members in? And that's just something to think about. All right, we do have a recommendation sitting here. Director Smith moves it, Director Houghton seconds it. One last chance for questions, comments. No references to Granny, please. All right, on the question, all those in favor? Is anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much for your input today. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas. All right. Next up, TNRD Parks and Trails Strategic Plan, Detailed Implementation Plan 2026-27. It's not a good day to go for a hike, so we'll listen to talking. We'll talk about hiking instead.
Good morning, board. Yes, it is a gloomy day looking out the window there, but we're gonna talk about fairer weather and nicer things to come. So just a quick introduction, actually, before I turn it over to Sherry Madden, who will present a chunk of this, and then I'll present the back end of the presentation. Just to kind of set the stage. So what, to remind the board, the strategic Parks and Trails plan was adopted earlier this year. We worked with a consultant to deliver that, and we had a committee formed that did a lot of good work through the whole process, extensive public consultation process. And we ended up with a strategic plan, which is the first step that we needed to do, and it's a great plan. But as always, strategic plans are still quite vague and high level. So they're setting the direction. So this next step that we're presenting now is actually trying to drill down a little bit more specifically and start getting essentially a to-do list for staff to start being able to check boxes and work through the strategic plan, how we're actually going to achieve the things that are identified in that plan. So that's the document that you're looking at in front of you today that we're looking for endorsement on. In the presentation today, we're not going to be going through all of it in detail. We're going to touch on kind of the highlight points, and I expect there'll be some good discussion about some specific things that are included in there. And now, as I said before, keep in the back of your mind, we always have, there's many more good ideas than we actually have money or resources or capacity to implement. So what we've done here is brought kind of to the forefront what we think are achievable and doable within the short and medium time frame. Obviously, if this board wants more done sooner, additional resources will need to be allocated. Also keep in mind that the intent is for this to be a living document. We expect to add things, change things, reprioritize things as specific projects come up to the board. But yeah, as I said before, I'll say again, the idea is here, this is a task list for staff to start working through. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sherry Madden, who's been the lead on this project.
Good morning, everybody. I apologize if I'm technologically challenged. I don't get in this room very often. Jamie covered some of what's in the presentation already, so some of it may be a quick repeat. So we'll review the detailed implementation plan, which you asked us to come back with. We'll talk about how we laid that out. We did break it down into, as Jamie indicated, sort of a short-term and a bit of a midterm opportunity. We'll review the deliverables, and then we'll talk about next steps and have opportunity for Q&A at the end. So what we did was we took the 23 recommendations that were outlined under the 6 Parks and Trails Strategic Plan goals, and we broke those down a little bit. And this was all developed through the engagement process of the Parks and Trails Strategic Plan, which directors, community recreation organizations, staff, was very well-rounded engagement opportunity, and it went through 2 phases, both in the preliminary before the draft of the plan, and then once the draft was done, we put it out again and ensured that things were taken into account. As Jamie indicated, this is a living document, so don't feel that we're locked into what's here. If at any time the board feels that things need to be reprioritized, it can certainly be brought back. And priorities do change, especially as boards do change. And part of what we recognized in here is that there is a forthcoming election. So trying to look at what could give opportunity for the current board to see success, and then give opportunity for the new board, which could include everybody who's sitting in the room, to have learning as well before we get too deep into the weeds. So as I indicated, this is going to give us in the phase one things that we've broken down under each of the goals. It's giving us time to investigate, report, implement, and provide you with measurable results in that first year. So you'll see some results, and then the new board will see results and stuff that we're working on as they come in the fall of this year, I guess, near Christmas. And then looking at phase two, it'll build on the work that we've done in the first 2 years because this is new to our staff as well. So we're having to fit in the things that came out of the Parks and Trails strategic plan into the current operational workloads and already planned capital projects, which we have. And of course, at any point in time, as Jamie indicated, if the board felt that we wanted to move this along more quickly, then we can look at opportunities for staffing and budget improvements or reallocation of priorities. So our number one goal under the Parks and Trails strategic plan was to foster government-to-government relationships with Indigenous communities. So during the phase one, so 26, 27, we will be prioritizing engagement with First Nations on specific projects, which we've already initiated. We will also be continuing to speak to them about the Parks and Trails strategic plan and send out a letter which also provides them the link to the detailed implementation plan so they can see where our thoughts are at this point in time. One thing we did here was engage sooner as opposed to later. So by providing them with that information, they will be already in the know of where we're thinking we're moving. And during phase two, we'll move on to inviting the 25 First Nations to discuss their initiatives and the potential opportunity for TNRD support. High Bar First Nation has already identified some things in the Clinton area that they're interested in working on and has asked for a meeting with us to discuss how we might support that, for example. We will continue to engage with First Nations through engagement with the Parks Establishment Policy to ensure that potential concerns or issues are addressed. And we will explore naming and renaming opportunities of parks and trails. So currently in the Blue River area, with the project that's gone underway up there, we actually have renamed a number of trails, and there is First Nations information with regards to SIMP included on our big kiosk signs. So our second goal was to support local outdoor recreation organizations that build, maintain, manage parks, trails, and supporting amenities in the region. This is something that we heard quite loudly through the consultation was lots of times there's lots of grants to build things, but there isn't necessarily money to look after those things in the long run. So, and also we do have some agreements with groups who already maintain TNRD facilities, such as the North Thompson or Barrier Recreation Organization. I apologize, I don't know their exact name, but they look after the Barrier Forks cross-country trails. It's a regional park. So we'll be looking to standardize agreements with groups who do maintain TNRD facilities. The community grant writer position, which was created by the board and supported, already engages with recreation organizations and will ensure that information is shared out to the groups which participated in the Parks and Trails strategic plan to ensure they can take part of that opportunity. And we'll review opportunities for an implementation of a recreation grant program. And you'll see under phase two, we talk about potential implementation of a recreation grant program. So Regional District of Bulkley and Nechako has gone down this route, does have an established plan, and is more than willing to share all of that information and has already shared all that information with me on the length of time it took, what their issues were with it, how it's working out, and they've gone through their first phase of awards. So fantastic learning opportunity there. Goal 3 was to improve collaboration with those nonprofits, industry, and other levels of government. So we've had a number of groups that maybe the presidents of the organization have approached TNRD staff and said, you know, we're getting a bit of volunteer burnout and we're thinking, you know, maybe we'd like the TNRD to take on this particular asset. So we'll review those opportunities by invitation of the groups. We're not looking to barge in and take anything over, but if the groups do reach out, there will be that opportunity to investigate that and see what that would mean moving forward. We'll continue to participate in the Shuswap Trails Alliance Roundtable, which just actually occurred last week. And it's a fantastic networking and learning opportunity because the Shuswap Trails group has done such a fabulous job of incorporating so many recreation organizations, municipal governments, regional district, First Nations, into a group that is moving forward in a cohesive pattern, and they have fantastic interaction with each other to move the goals and objectives forward. And of course, through the board, we've joined the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC and are attending monthly webinars and roundtables, which are providing great learning insights, reports that make it so that we don't have to do the learning. The learning is already there. And we can share that information out with the recreation organizations as well, or CBC is very great about that. They just want their information shared out and they don't care if you're a member. Moving forward beyond 2027, it would be great to be able to hold municipal and TNRD coordination meetings on partnership opportunities. This was something we heard when holding consultation and engagement with the municipalities during the Parks and Trails strategic planning process was, within a municipality, they're planning on doing a trail or a park or something like that, or there's a trail that comes out of the municipality and goes into the regional district area. What could we do to coordinate that effort? Because in the municipal area, for example, it could start on municipally owned park area. But then as soon as it gets outside the boundary, we could be on to Crown land. And at this point in time, there's no tenure on that Crown land. So how could the TNRD support that? How could you work to make sure that things are moving forward, both for an economic, local, and recreational opportunity? And then potentially establishing sub-regional working groups similar to the Shuswap Trails Alliance. Under Goal 4, we were looking to establish management and maintenance tools to ensure long-term sustainability of the TNRD-owned parks and trails. So part of that is we're already working with the lead Fire Smart coordinator to assess opportunities for Fire Smart and fuel management opportunities within our parks and trails. We're working with Mike to develop an asset management plan for our facilities. We're going to look to update our existing parks and trails management plans because many of them have actually had development plans pulled together and we've been implementing those. One of the bigger ones recently is Joe's work on Smith Pioneer Park and the Little Fort Community Park, Latrimo Park. So we'll be looking to update those plans, see if there's anything else that needs to be there, if there's anything that still needs to be put into place. And then there are many parks we have that we don't actually have these plans already. Keekwillie is one of them, for example. So we'll be looking to develop plans for those areas. And this would all be done with community engagement as well. We'll be looking to set policy for community versus regional park designation. So staff has taken a look at where parks are currently designated within community or regional service. And some of them are not necessarily a good fit because really is it a local community park when it's the Agate Bay boat launch and you pull up there on any day during the summer and you've got people from Kamloops, you've got people from Clearwater, you've got people from down in the Merritt area that are coming to enjoy Adams Lake. Is that really a community park? So we're going to take a look at what that policy might look like and then review what the designations would be and bring a report back to the board in the future. We'd like to establish a park use policy and we'd like to explore park-related revenue streams because sometimes our park areas are being used to generate a revenue, but at this point in time, we do not have anything related to charging fees or anything. So they're using the facility for free. So we would like to explore what these opportunities may be and then provide information back to the board. And then under phase 2 in 2028, we'd like to define what our service standards are for our parks and trails. So we do currently have standards, but we don't have anything officially designated as our standard for our parks and trails. And then we'd like to work on enhancing our park experience for all visitors. And accessibility is a big part of this. And we did work with the Accessibility Committee and also with some groups during the Parks and Trails Strategic Plan process. So we would like to assess, and this would be part of our updating of our master plans and creating new plans for parks, assessing our parks and trails for accessibility and including accessibility in our future projects where feasible. Publish our accessibility information on the TNRD website. So there's quick wins within some of these items. We're working to standardize our parks and trails signage now. We will implement our currently approved 2026 capital projects, and we'll continue to seek grants for the Green Mile Stacked Loop system, which is part of the Blue River Trails Master Plan that was adopted in 2021. So we'll continue to try and move that master plan along. And then moving into phase 2 for this, things that take a little bit longer to get going. We'd like to improve the access road at Little Hells Gate Regional Park. It is something that we do hear from time to time through the year, and we do have it signed that the road is a bit rough. But we've been working on sorting out the tenure issues on there before we can actually go and spend any money on it. We'd like to upgrade the Agate Bay boat launch that we've referred to previously. That area gets a heavy amount of use. Parking is a substantial issue there in the summertime. So looking at opportunities for improving that site. Continuing work on the Blue River Trails Master Plan, which is near and dear to Director Onslow's heart. And we'd like to investigate some options for the Ferry Road Park boat launch, which is an old reaction ferry site. And right now it's just a dirt boat launch. So it gets quite a bit of abuse. And in the winter, when it gets plowed and stuff by Argo, it takes a bit of abuse. So there may be opportunity for improving that because we are starting to see a higher level of use on the North Thompson River. So to be better to provide good amenities that make it so that it is a great recreational opportunity. I'm going to turn it over to my fearless leader to actually speak to you about the specific projects which we have identified. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. So the last couple slides, particular number 4 and number 5, that really focused on our existing parks infrastructure. And as you could see there, there's no shortage of work that we've identified through this strategic plan around upgrades and maintenance for those existing parks. But I imagine that a lot of you have been thinking, because a lot of people were hearing, and even people around this room contributing ideas towards the Parks and Trails strategy about new park assets. What else could we do? How could we expand our existing program? So in the first phase, again, the first couple of years, really what we're focusing on, to be very clear, we're not expecting to build any new parks within that short time frame of the next 2 years. But what we are committing to do is to do a deeper dive to investigate these opportunities. So kind of broken that down into 3 phases. Number 1 would be to assess all of our existing parkland. So some board members are aware and some may not be aware, we actually have quite a number of subdivision parks that were given to the TNRD as part of development plans that some of them we've had in our as of the ownership of for the last 20 or 30 years that have never been developed. So they're existing parkland zoning, but we have no budget or actual park existing there. They're just a vacant lot. So there's dozens of those across the region. So the idea was to do a full assessment of all those and get some clear direction from the board around what to do with them. Either we look at developing them, if there's a recommendation to develop them, and then what it would look like in terms of funding that, or we simply get rid of them. You know, we could raise title and sell them and use that funding towards other parks projects. So right now, they're just kind of orphans out there in some of the communities. Second bullet there is to investigate new regional parks. So this is really around that economic development kind of angle, thinking actually back to this board early on when this board got together and developed a strategic plan for the TNRD for the next 4 years. There was a lot of talk about this kind of economic development around natural resources, around natural areas, and sort of a regional destination for outdoor assets. So I'm going to talk about some of those. And then the third one is to really, we've come up with a list of specific projects that have kind of, lack of a better word, kind of floated to the top. We have many ideas that came forward through the public consultation process. So what we've done is done a bit of I don't want to say a deep dive, kind of at a surface level. We've assessed which ones are actually feasible based on the location, based on available land, what could actually be accomplished. And those are the ones we're presenting here today. So before I start getting into it, so what I'm going to do is actually go through all of these possible parks and trail development that we're going to do further research into. So I want everyone to get excited about all these ideas, but don't get overexcited because we're just talking about these as concepts right now. There hasn't been any further work done other than what I'm presenting here today, but we're committing to look into them further, and then this board will get more information about them. So under the kind of that destination parks, we have two that we've identified as kind of the ones that are most feasible, and some work's already be done. So this Kamloops Lake Trail has been talked about for quite a few years. I know it's there's even been some groups within Kamloops trying to organize this. The concept is, wouldn't it be great if there was a single track trail connecting Kennecott Park through to Tobiano, with a future extension going along to Balancing Rock and Savinaw? So connecting the entire length of that south shore of Kamloops Lake. As you know, like the picture behind you, this is often used in marketing material for City of Kamloops, Area J, and the kind of surrounding area. But it's not actually easily accessible to get to these viewpoints, or they're only, there's a few select areas you can get to through the road. Imagine a trail that connected that whole way. So there's definitely a lot of potential there around existing property ownership. So for example, the piece from Kennecott Park through to Tobiano, or through to Deer Drive and Cherry Creek, it's almost all the property is owned by New Gold, so it's private property. So there's an opportunity there to partner with them to make that connection. And then obviously there'd be also Crown land that would be from the Tobiano portion down to Savinaw. Added to this is the excitement around the new multiplex that'll be at the basically base of Kennecott Park, potential Kamloops Library there, all that tied together with existing parking. So think of this not just as individual trail users. Some quick and dirty math, it'd be probably a perfect marathon distance running to Tobiano and back. So running marathon or ultra marathon events there, mountain bike events there. And it's an easy shuttle both ways if you wanted to drop a vehicle and go the other way. The one other point about these kind of longer trails that are being developed around BC now is the popularity of e-mountain bikes. So all of a sudden, a 30-kilometer trail is a lot more accessible to the average person, when before it was a pretty epic journey. So another one on kind of similar vein is the Bonaparte Canyon idea. So this concept started with the fact that when the TNRD purchased the land that off of Metro Vancouver, where the Boston Flats Eco Depot is, the Eco Depot is just a small portion, a couple hectares, but our actual property there is quite large. I think it's about 90 hectares. So we actually own a whole chunk of the Bonaparte River on either side, as well as the mountainside across from where the Eco Depot is. For those who can kind of picture the drive from Cache Creek down to Ashcroft, as you're driving down to Ashcroft on the left-hand side, there's a very dramatic canyon where the Bonaparte River flows down to connect with the Thompson River. So the concept here is, wouldn't it be neat if there was a trail connecting Cache Creek through Boston Flats, down this dramatic canyon into Ashcroft? The terminus would happen to be right at Desert Hills Ranch at the bottom of the canyon. So we already own some property in that area. It butts up to an existing BC Parks property as part of the Elephant Hill Park. There is some private land and other Crown land mixed in there, but definitely a neat opportunity. There's even potential for further development down the road of the existing TNRD property that's down along the river. Could be developed for a day use park, even overnight campsite. So moving on to, these are kind of the bigger ideas, destination parks. Here's just another Google Earth image of kind of how dramatic that canyon is. So on the right-hand side in the yellow, that's the highway going down into Ashcroft. So The remaining 10 projects here, I'll go through fairly quickly. But the first 4, the ones that we have the little star on, they're actually projects that kind of already have been in the works from a staff perspective. So what we've included in the plan that we're going to prioritize these as to continue the work that's being done, and we want the board's endorsement on that. So the first one is this Lewis Creek Eco Depot. I'll actually skip to the next photo. So if you can picture driving just before you get into Barrier, at the Agate Bay Road on the right-hand side is our Eco Depot. This is the old Tokel Mill site, for those who remember that, which is who we bought the property off of. That entire mountain behind the Eco Depot, right down to the Lewis Creek on the right-hand side, all of that land, the TNRD already owns. We own a large chunk there. We bought it as one parcel. We only needed a small piece for the Eco Depot. So that's why this is kind of a low-hanging fruit for development. There'd be no tenure required, no land acquisition. There already is existing unofficial trails on this mountain that locals are using, and there's existing trail group that is really active in wanting to pursue development of those trails. Volunteer base already there who wants to mark and flag existing trails. So we would just need to work with them to legitimize that. So we're working towards that, and more information to come. Pritchard Beach, so this is Area P. Probably many on the board have heard around this. The reason we're already working on it is because it's a very controversial, contentious issue around long-term camping, unregulated use of this site. We have been involved for quite a few years because we have a very small tenure, which literally takes up the space of how much space we could fit a garbage can and an outhouse in, just as a way to sort of manage waste on that site, but we have no control over the larger site. It is not designated as a BC park. It's just a undesignated crown. So our challenge has been the complaints are coming in around the site, but we have no way to enforce or regulate it. But if we did develop it into an actual TNRD park and obtain tenure from the province, then we would have the ability to have full control. There is a lot of great potential here. It's easily accessible off the highway. It would be an access point to the South Thompson River. Got nice sandy beach, a lot of residents right across the street. So we want to continue to pursue that one. These are just some more photos of that site. Another one similar to Pritchard Beach in Area L is Monty Lake. Again, just near close proximity to Highway 97, right in the community of Monty Lake. It's already a very high use area, kind of an unregulated, unmaintained boat launch and waterfront recreation area. Again, TNRD has been involved by area directors in the past have contributed funds, which we've now turned funding through our parks program just to put some basic amenities, a garbage can and an outhouse there. So the idea here would be to pursue tenure and actually develop it into a park. Here again, we have local residents engaged and supporting and already want this project to move forward. Loon Lake. So this one is a subdivision park that we already have plans for through our utilities, our water utility there. So our water utility is looking at putting a water bottle fill station here because this system is perpetually on boil water notice. From a financial point of view, it's not feasible to expect a water treatment plant for that water system anytime soon. So the idea is to provide at least potable water through a miniature treatment plant for a bottle fill station. And then it would also serve the entire community who's not on the water system to be able to get bottled water within the community to drink. So the idea was that would go in this subdivision park, but then we'd expand parking in this area so it would also serve as a parking lot for the boat launch that's nearby, for the residents who have water access only properties, or for day use boaters. The challenge here is that there's kind of an unofficial boat launch, a Modi road access point, but there's nowhere to park vehicles. So especially those people who are there for days or weeks who have cabins on the other side, they need to find some sort of private arrangement with the landowner of where, on the other side of the lake, of where they can park their vehicle. Murray Falls, this is Area I, well-known roadside attraction. Lots of people stopping there taking photos as you drive through Spence's Bridge. We know the site's currently enjoyed by local residents. There's an existing unofficial trail there. There's actually an old campground that once existed there. Very unique landform in the region, as you can see from this picture, not just the waterfall, but also the colors. And again, it's easily accessible from the community and from the highway. So lots of potential here to develop day use area, to get a proper trail, safe trail with a proper viewing platform. So that's what the falls look like up close. And I threw a photo of just the existing trail. As you see, it's you know, just maintained by locals, definitely not to safety standards, but you can get across the creek if you're careful. Another project in Area I, again, an existing trail called the Inukshuk Trail that's just outside of Ashcroft. So this one already has an active volunteer base that maintains the trail. It's just one of those gray area trails where well-maintained, well-known, no official tenure exists. So is there an opportunity here to develop that into a legitimate TNRD trail that can be signed and marketed further? It actually would begin technically within the village of Ashcroft boundaries, but then it quickly leaves the Ashcroft boundaries and goes into electoral area I. This one's kind of a general one that we received a lot of comments on, is around water access points. So the way Ministry of Transportation operates is that throughout communities where there's roadways near the water, there's designated Ministry of Transportation road water access points. So it's their tenure, their ownership. However, they're very clear that they do not maintain, regulate, do anything. They just exist. So there's definitely a lot of interest in a lot of different communities, Savinaw being one of them that we heard a lot of interest here from, is to actually maintain these, and by maintain them, even just, you know, whippersnip them, take the trees out, make sure they're properly signed so people know that they're public access points. One of the issues here, especially in Savinaw, is because they've been unmaintained and unsigned, they've slowly evolved into maybe the neighboring property sort of taking them over and managing them like themselves. So conflicts exist where the perception is you're trespassing on someone's property, you get down to a water access to the beachfront, when in fact it's actually public access, but doesn't look or feel that way. So the idea with this one is not just in Savinaw, but we'd look at all the water access points that exist in the TNRD and then identify a select few of those that are kind of the highest potential for opportunity for development. And when I say development, again, just maintaining them. What we do though is we'd go to Ministry of Transportation and actually obtain the tenure for that access point. Ministry of Transportation has indicated to us in any discussion that they'd be happily support any local government taking on tenure of those access points so they could be maintained. They just don't want to fund them. So here's an example of one in Penettan Lake. The next one's Kamloops Lake. And here's one that exists at Loon Lake. Johnson Lake, so very famous, well-known area. This project would be specific to actually the west end of the lake, where there's an existing old boat launch. So again, opportunity here to add parking and usability and better access to that lake. For those who've been there now, the Rec Sites and Sales and Rec Sites and Trails BC facility that's on the east end of the lake is very well used, but does have difficult access to the lake. Also potential to partner with Simp First Nation, who has recently taken over ownership of the resort that's on that lake. East Shuswap Road. So as many know, there's currently an active transportation project happening that's being led by Tecumlips on their bandlands there. So the opportunity here would be to extend that, continue it. That would be obviously working with Ministry of Transportation on improving safety along that already very popular cycling route. So for those who aren't familiar, the popular cycling route is basically doing the loop where you're in Kamloops and you go out East Shuswap Road and cross the Lafarge Bridge and head back along Dallas Drive back into Kamloops. So there's no really existing shoulder on East Shuswap Road. However, there has been actually upgrades to the cattle guards, as you see in this picture here, to make it safer to cross on a road bike. And I think there's the final one, last but not least at all, Aberdeen Road Pathway or pedestrian pathway. So Aberdeen Drive is the road that you see right in the middle of that photo. The main corridor for all the residential areas, kind of getting to the school and getting to the commercial area at the intersection. There's often pedestrians on that road, but no safe walkway along that road. Many years now, the community has been advocating for some sort of better safe access on that road. Ministry of Transportation is supportive of that in terms of using their right of way, but not willing to fund a project. So that could be investigated further about how we could be involved in that. So that's a lot of ideas I just dumped on you. So what we're looking for is, I guess the recommendation before you is to endorse moving forward with the draft plan that you see attached, and we'll start working towards that. But definitely open to any additions, deletions, suggestions, and questions and input.
Thank you. So recommendation moved by Director Ranta, seconded by Director Hayward. I already have Director Middleton on the list. I've got Director Houghton, Director Sarai. All right, Director Middleton.
Thank you. And I don't know if in the plan further, if it goes through and into, other parts of document or whatnot. There's quite a few sort of different designations of type of trail. We're seeing active transportation, we're seeing hiking, we're seeing biking, sort of all different sort of terminologies used. So I'm presuming then that some trails are going to be suitable for different types of activity. Are we going to be kind of designating certain trails for certain types of use versus others? I'm just thinking of some of the clashes that we, already see in some where, complaints that hiking trails are being used by people riding bikes who are sort of running people off the trail a little, shall we say. We're seeing introduction of motorized and electric type of either bikes or motorcycles, that sort of thing, on some of the trail on the multi-use type of pathways. So is there sort of going to be a breakdown of what trails are being developed for what's going to be suitable, and are we going to be able to, I don't want to say control, but are we going to be able to sort of designate trails for certain types of use, or is there a standard that all trails are going to be aspired to be built to?
Yeah, great question. So the answer is yes, we will definitely be able to designate them, and all of your points are very well taken and valid. That is a concern, the types of use, and it needs to be clear what the use is. We have not done that yet to this level of detail, but as I talked about each of those projects that we're going to look into further, that'll be part of the discussion. Okay, if we're looking at this trail between Cache Creek and Ashcroft, how is it going to be designed, and what's going to be the primary users? What type of vehicles, devices are allowed on it? Is it hiking trail only, or will there be cycling allowed? What are the rules around that? I know Sherry's involved in the ORCBC that probably has a lot of guidelines around how you designate them, and the classification. So I guess I'll mention the two that I talked about up front. The idea with the concept with the Camas Lake Trail would be primarily a biking / running trail, mountain biking / running trail, whereas the Ashcroft Cache Creek Trail at kind of the level of detail we've looked into it would be more suitable to be like a hiking designated trail only, not for equestrian or mountain biking because of the steepness of the terrain. Anything to add to that, Sherry?
Yes, I think that the designation of trails, it's a bit of a difficult thing. It depends if the trail's already been established and what the traditional use is, versus if a new trail such as Bonaparte or Kamloops Lake Trail was being established. So I think that would come out through consultation. And also First Nations do definitely have input on trail usage and what the different categories may be there. So that would impact it as well. So for example, in the Blue River area, even though the trails are primarily hiking, we do permit level 1 e-bike, for example. So it can't have a throttle is what that means. But we don't see a lot of mountain biking use there. We do advertise that they're available for mountain biking, but that's not necessarily their primary use. But those trails were already all established and all being utilized in that fashion. So it isn't necessarily that we took away a use, but we figured out a way to make it so that the use could happen. And then we ensured that everything was appropriately signed or will be appropriately assigned in the spring. Yeah, so I think it depends on whether it's a trail that's being taken over, taken on, not over. So similar to the Inukshuk Trail, I'm sure that it already has uses that are taking place out there versus a trail that we'd be looking to establish, which would be through consultation and engagement.
Director Houghton?
Yeah, I just wanted to pass on that Director Sal wished he could be here to attend the meeting, being that I believe he's the chair of the committee, but his health got the best of him and he thought he should head her on home. So he wanted me to pass on his regards that he couldn't be here today.
Thank you very much. I've got Director Sarai and then Director Newstater. And Director Thorpe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment for staff, and they're probably already aware of it, but I know you mentioned that you were talking with First Nations on parks and trails. And then another slide, I think on page 5, you talked about municipalities and TNRD. And I hope that's where we can also include First Nations in those conversations, because a lot of the trails interact with each other's property. And if we can get ahead of that, the funding sources that come out of the 3 partnerships there, we have better opportunities of getting successful funding.
Thank you. Director Newstater, then Director Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Great work on this. So much work on this. Well done to staff and to the committee as well. I'm curious, I heard you talk about the quote unquote orphaned parks that exist in some areas, and the 2 options you mentioned were either development or divesting, essentially. I think there's some of those parks where neighborhoods like them undeveloped and still existing. I would hazard a guess that there are a number of those as well. Is there a third option that remains? That, the one thing we can't make more of is land, and maybe we want to leave some of those in place that are used for kind of raw neighborhood use, as opposed to having to develop or dispose of everything. Is that also in consideration?
Yeah, through the chair. Thanks for that. Yeah, more work to be done on that one, but point taken. I think from my perspective, our issue is when I say orphaned, these are ones that we completely ignore. So we own the land and liability of it and are not visiting and maintaining it. So I guess to your point, one option may be we can keep it as a park and then we do very, very basic low cost maintenance to ensure, or protect ourselves from a liability standpoint. That would be one of the options.
Director Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really excited to see some of those potential parks. A couple at the trail and that Murray Creek one. I'm going to throw a little tiny bit of a monkey wrench in, but it might be a low-hanging fruit. It's my understanding that Lytton First Nations is looking at a trail strategy, and they're looking at up near the battlefield, they're looking at campgrounds and powwow grounds, etc. And one of the things that was tied into that was potentially a trail that would go through some of their communities and down past the Reaction Ferry and into the village of Lytton. And there might be some funding opportunities, collaboration that could happen, and that might be an easy win if we could form a partnership there. Just a thought.
Thank you for that, Director Thorpe. And I think that goes to Sherry's slide on, I guess, the first phase about, or the first strategy around engaging with First Nations. And so what we want to do is kind of now that the strategy has been adopted, re-engage with them and keep communicating and saying, this is what we're doing. And one of the pieces on there is if there's opportunity to partner, like if they're leading a project, can we support it? So it wouldn't be us taking the lead, but supporting what they're doing. She mentioned the High Bar First Nation around Clinton, but it sounds like this Lytton, there could be an opportunity in Lytton as well that we're not aware of.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Oh, excuse me. All right. Well, thank you very much for the awesome presentation. Some great ideas there. I'm sure there will be more added to the list. All right. On the recommendation then, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. All right, we have Mr. Kelly here today who has driven all the way from Kelowna, even though he is not well. So we have two more very important presentations to get through. We do need to finish by noon because we do have the Staff Long Service Awards presentation and luncheon coming up. So I am not going to have a break. If you do need to leave the room, I trust you will do so quietly and unobtrusively. But we are just going to move. Don't laugh. Laughing with me, good. So we are going to move straight on to a presentation and an update regarding BC assessment. Oh, no. All right, cancel that. We're good to go. All right, we're moving ahead with BC assessment update.
Good morning, everyone. So we have received what is now called the preview role from BC Assessment. This is a new role that we haven't gotten before. This role has their proposed changes for the next cycle coming, and this includes the changes to the pipeline. So I was able to take this information, put it into the budget information that you saw yesterday, and come up with some impact assessment for you. Oh, there we go. To give you a quick disclaimer before I begin, the information that we received a couple months ago from BC Assessment was very, very high level on what they were planning on changing for the pipeline. That information looked like a % by rural area, not even broken down by electoral area, for the utility class. So when we brought that original assessment to you, we were looking at approximately a $234,000 increase to residential taxpayers that was shifting away from the utility class. That did not include specified services. It didn't look at the impact on municipalities. It was quite simply taking the information that BC Assessment gave us for rural areas and extrapolating that out to see what kind of impact that looks like. The other disclaimer that I want to give you is this preview role that we've received from BC Assessment includes all their proposed 2026 changes. So that would include your changes to like homes going up in value, businesses going up in value. However, it's likely, and we've seen in the past, that all the classes tend to increase by roughly the same rate. So this should focus mostly on the changes that you see to the utility class. What we're looking at overall is a shift away from what the utility class is currently paying of about $1 million. This shift is going to be about $681,000 increased taxation to residents. It's going to be about $214,000 increased taxation to businesses, and the remainder of the increase is spread across the remaining classes. Overall, this is a 3.3% decrease in what the utility, overall, this is a 3.3% decrease to our overall taxation contribution that the utility class is currently paying. This is about 2.5 times larger of an impact than what we brought to you a few months ago. It's quite significant. What I've got up here on the screen now is a look at the total requisition dollar that you saw in our presentation yesterday. Does this work? Oh. So this column here is the presentation that you saw yesterday. This $30.7 million is our total tax requisition, not our total expenses. You'll see in the second column here, it doesn't change. Total tax is still collected at the same amount overall. But you see here the utility class is at 6.7 million and goes to about 5.7 million. And you can see in that third column, the dollar change is where that $1 million that's decreasing from the utility class is going. So that's that 681,000 for residential, 213,000 for business, and then there's slight increases to the other contributors as well. This map here is a heat map of the TNRD. There's a couple regions within the TNRD that did see a slight positive impact. Those are in green. As the impact is more negative, shifting away from the utility class towards other taxpayer classes, you see it deepens in redness. This is a more detailed breakdown. I'll leave this on the screen for a sec so you can look at this in more detail. First column there is how much is shifting away from the utilities class, and you can see that total at the bottom of $1 million. The second, third, and fourth columns is the residential, business, and other classes. One thing that you may notice is that there is a shift. For example, if you look at that very first line, where the city of Kamloops has a decrease of $3,000 contributed by the utility class, but a $34,000 increase for residential, almost $50,000 increase for business. The reason for that is because when there's a significant decrease in the total assessment for the utility class, that pie shifts from electoral area to municipality for services where all members are contributing. So typically we see Kamloops at around a 63% contribution for those services that all regions are participating in. As the utility class decreases in overall assessment, so too does the overall assessment of the electoral areas, which decreases their share of the pie. We talk about that share of the pie as it comes up quite often, and I think this is where you'll see the most impact here. I've not included it in the presentation because I know this is the TNRD board, but the TRHD is also seeing an impact as well. The hospital is seeing roughly a $300,000 shift from the utility class to other taxpayer classes. This is a $147,000 increase to residential taxpayers of that $300,000. Overall, between the two, it's about $1.3 million, shifting away from the utility class and shifting towards the other classes. At this point, I'll open it up for questions. I know it's something that we've been thinking about and curious about for a pretty long time, so I'll leave it on this tab or this slide because there's a lot of information on here, and open it up for questions.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions right now? Director Laird.
Thank you, Chair. When the advocacy group met with the Premier, was there any suggestion that this might not happen, or is there any chance that we might be looking at not doing it this year? Because that's a huge hit.
The Premier gave no indication that there was anything on the horizon. That doesn't mean there isn't. It just means he maybe was a good poker player, or he honestly doesn't know. The sense I get is that the province did not anticipate this much blowback from local governments. I'm not entirely sure what they thought the reaction would be, but they seem somewhat surprised that it is what it is. Perhaps we will get an indication later in this presentation as to whether we think that there might be a possibility of a postponement. When we spoke with the Premier, we explained that we understood revisions and overhauls and revisitings of classes of taxation were inevitable, and they happened, but we did reiterate that the suddenness and the lack of consultation were catching so many local governments unawares, and that at the very least, could we have a postponement so that local governments have a chance to really fully absorb the implications and try to come up with some responses or ways of dealing with it that we're going to try to possibly ease the pain. I do have, it was circulated to everyone, a motion to come out of this that will go up on screen as well. Sorry, who had their hand up?
CFO Fox.
CFO Fox?
Thank you, Chair. Through to the board, I think that overall the information, when I talked to UBCM, because they reached out to us as well, one of their contacts and I knew each other from previous. So we started to talk and I got Austin on with us and we ran through this exact information. We've had a few people reach out since asking us how we've broken down this information to explain. One of the issues I have right now is that BC Assessment typically at this time is putting out the completed roll. We got a preview roll, that's what we ran the numbers off of. My concern is that if they put out the completed roll, the chances of this not going through the chances of us stopping this from going through seems unlikely. My hope is that the contacts that are out there and the letters that they're receiving from my discussions with UBCM, I think their perspective as well is that BC Assessment really was unprepared for the impact of this. This isn't a legislative change, but hugely impactful. And I don't know that that was really taken into account until we really started looking at the numbers ourselves, because they said they give us advance notice, but advance notice September to now really for us is not much notice at all. So I think the impact wasn't very well thought through. I think we have a very short time frame to turn more attention and highlight this with the Minister of Finance's BC Assessment said that's where the decision lies. So just from my perspective as staff, there's not much we can do. I think this is in your guys' hands at this point to move forward.
Well, just to speak to the gentleman from BC Assessment who spoke with us a couple of meetings ago, certainly seemed unprepared, shall we say, for the level of response and the type of response that he got, which surprised me at the time and continues to surprise me. CAO Hildebrand.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add, so UBCM was a contact that happened this week, which was very helpful. I know they're pushing it. I know that all 27 regional districts are the ones that are impacted. They're very much aware of this, and there's been a lot of letters and communications between CAOs. Municipalities as well have been talking a lot about it. And this data was now just shared with the MLAs as well, because I know MLA Millibar had taken this upon himself, and I believe is bringing something forward very soon, and he now has the updated data. So just wanted to make sure people know.
And Director Yates.
Oh, yeah, sorry, no, this one will be fine. Question. So before pipeline total requisition, we have the grand total at the bottom of 37,14993, and then after 37,14993. So we're basically going to be making that up by increasing taxes. So in Merritt, when we had our issues, we increased taxes, but we also cut staff. We cut 14 members. Have we started looking at staff cuts, this kind of stuff? Because the bottom line staying the same all the time, it's not going to work for much longer, be honest.
Yes, just to clarify, total tax, same, you're right. Bottom line doesn't change. It's just a shift of the burden from utilities to residents, businesses, and industry.
Thank you, Director Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just wondering if there was any conversation when you were in Victoria about the suggestion that the next round of assessments on the rail lines was going to be coming next year, which was going to create an opposite effect, which would offset this to a great extent. And we were wondering whether they were going to be aligned somehow a little bit closer than what they are.
We did, I've heard that apparently we have been told that the reassessment for rail lines is going to have a more positive effect. I'm going to wait till I see the cold hard facts before I accept that. What we did say to the Premier was that if, in line with this being postponed, if this reassessment for pipelines could be discussed at the same time that the other utilities are discussed, to do them all together, because that way, if there are going to be positive benefits from changes to one class, that would help to mitigate the changes, the negative impacts from the changes to the pipeline class. So that was something that we put out there as well as a suggestion, saying, not saying don't do it, although that would be nice, but if it has to be done, can it be done in a manner that is going to lessen the impact? Because to get back to Director Getz's points, yes, absolutely. Some municipalities, some regional districts might have to look at cutting services, cutting staff in order to make up this difference so that they are not burdening their residents and their businesses. That's a decision they're going to have to make, but at least it would give them time to make it with some sober reflection rather than knee-jerk reactions. Director Laird?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering if we have any ability, we have the information of the amount of revenue that could possibly be lost. Is there an opportunity to staff actually seeing what would happen if that did occur and what would happen to our budget? Because we know it's possibly $1 million shortfall. Should we not be looking at some sort of a plan now as to what happens if it's implemented instead of waiting until it does?
Through the chair to the board, just to confirm, there is no loss in revenue. It's just a shift of revenue. We'd still collect the exact same amount of taxation overall. It would just be collected from other taxpayers instead of the utilities class.
I'm quite aware of that, but it's going to, it's a huge impact, and we've seen it all. I think we have to make some sort of, or give some thought of how we can justify adding that huge amount of extra taxation. We have an opportunity now to look at it. We just passed our preliminary budget yesterday, and it might not even work for us anymore, especially the rural directors. When I look and see the amount that's going to increase into my taxpayers, it's not sustainable. I won't accept it. We'd have to, and I think we have to take now look and see how you would possibly change so that the impact wouldn't be so hard. It would be nice to know exactly what's happening, but at this time we don't. I think we should take the opportunity to look and be realistic of what changes might possibly happen. Myself, I really dislike the idea of decreasing staff. We have a very good staff. I don't think we're overstaffed in any of our positions. We've done an excellent job of that. And to think of losing staff is not acceptable to me. I think we need to find a different way of doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is the point that we've been making, and I think others have been making as well, which is that if this is going to come, can at least be postponed for a year so that then we can make those decisions about how we can offset the impact to residents and to businesses, rather than just simply transferring the burden over to them. Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. I think that this postponement effort and involving the Premier and the UBCM, other communities is the number one approach. See if they can postpone it, see if politically they can get involved. But I asked the question when that gentleman was on the line, whether we had the ability to file an appeal. And he couched it. He said, well, you can file an appeal. It's a limited appeal based on the application. But one of the fundamental appeal points, I think, is that they are following the cost approach as opposed to the income approach. And, I'm not an appraiser, but I certainly know a lot of appraisers who say that the number one way you value things is by the current value, current market approach. You look to the secondary approach, cost approach, if you can't get an income approach. And I just looked up, Enbridge stock price over the last 5 years increased 51%. TC Energy's increased 43%. Pembina has increased 57%. So here we have pipelines saying, oh my gosh, our pipelines have gone down in value. But the very litmus test, the public stock market is saying, no, it hasn't gone down in value. It's gone up by 50%. And I think if we had as a sort of a secondary approach, if the political will isn't there to postpone it, then let's maybe prepare an appeal based on the fact that the BC assessment made the wrong approach to their assessment, and get the backing of the UBCM and the other communities to file that appeal. That appeal then, and BC assessment has a very specific time frame. You've got so many days to file an appeal on your private property. I'm sure they have the same one. But if we prepared ourselves as a secondary approach to file an appeal with the backing of UBCM, so TNRD isn't doing this alone, that might be another approach. We kind of put some armor on and say, okay, if you're not going to work with us, then we got to go to battle here. So anyways, that's a thought.
Thank you. I have Director Sarai and then Director Getz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if everybody got this in their agenda or on their desk. It's a letter from Silga dated December the 1st to Minister Bailey on this exact subject. And every 37 communities in Silga have the same concerns that we're hearing today. And some of the members of Silga are here too. And this isn't going over very well anywhere. All our residents, like Director Laird said, this is a huge financial hit. I understand staff saying we're collecting that tax. We're just going to have to get it from somewhere else. At the end of the day, that somewhere else is the taxpayers that weren't expecting this hit, nor were we. So when you talk about UBCM, I think being a member of Silga here in our region, we are thankful that they're taking this on head on, and they are expecting a delay from Minister Bailey. We haven't got a reply back, but I can assure you that that board and our board are working diligently on this to get their attention, that at least, if anything, stall it till next year so we all have an opportunity to have our input on it.
Thank you. Director Getz and Director Blackwell.
So just a tidbit of information here. Quarterly performance, Trans Mountain Pipeline Q3 2025. The pipeline reported 765 million in revenue and 127 million in profit for the quarter ending September 30th, 2025, a significant turnaround from losses a year prior. So I'm sure they could probably bypass $1 million without too much worry.
So much cynicism. Director Blackwell.
Yeah, clarification from staff. This latest version, what's the dollar difference and percentage difference versus the last version that we saw of this, the initial one that was presented? Follow-up comment.
Just to clarify, you're looking at the total difference in the assessment for the pipeline?
So
for the utility class?
When this originally came to the board a month and a half ago.
Oh.
So how much more impact is this than the last one? Because you've kind of said that this is significantly more.
Through the chair of the board, we were originally looking at $234,000 impact to residents, and we're now looking at a $681,000 impact to residents.
But 1.3 million overall when we're talking hospital board. So we're essentially what Mr. Hildebrand is saying, roughly 3 times what we initially thought. I mean, you're accountancy people, you'll probably have more precise numbers than that. But yeah, okay, 3 times worse. Yeah, so I actually did an interview on this and pipeline stuff with Calgary AM radio, CBC on Monday, 6 minutes, and I brought this right to Trans Mountain and they called within the day to talk about doing other things in our community without mentioning the loss of taxation. So after this meeting, I actually have a meeting with federal folks who want to take this up as well. So yes, we need to continue pressure at every level, not just UBCM, also still got all of them.
Director Newstater?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the fact that the powers to be didn't expect there to be a reaction to this is as concerning to me as anything else. I think it also it now behooves us to think ahead on this matter. Where does this stop? Eventually, are we compensating for all pipelines? Or are residents paying for all of them? Is this going to be a 10% year-over-year devaluation until we are solely responsible for these pipelines? So I think that it would also be important for us to look at a longer-term strategy to lay out our expectations, both for communication and also for gathering information from communities who are going to be impacted by this. I would like to know if this is an indication of a slippery slope that we are now on as well. So perhaps something just to leave with staff as we think forward and explore this. But I think they've given us a pretty strong signal that they don't plan on doing consultation. They do plan on surprising local governments and regional districts with this at the last moment. And we would be wise to take that warning and plan forward.
Well, I think Director O'Reilly, I don't know if everyone else heard his comments yesterday after the presentation about the clean energy project. Did ask a couple of somewhat pointed questions about long-term assessments and taxation, because as we all know, these properties come into our areas, and one of the big promises is the tax revenue and the windfall bonanza that their project is going to be for us. And I think it behooves us all, I love that word, to ask these tough questions when these people come to us, willing to promise the sun, the moon, and the stars to get us to look favorably on their project. We need to really hold their feet to the fire and start thinking ahead long term. I mean, what's it going to look like in 20 years when suddenly they decide that, oh, their property is overvalued for their benefit, and so how's that going to affect the rest of us? I have Director Laird and then Director O'Reilly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The letters that I've read and what we're presenting is from the taxpayer's point of view and the amount of impact it's going to have. Director Grenier and pointed out the amount of money, the value of all these companies have gone up. And I haven't seen any referral to the amount of money they're generating out of our communities, out of our resources. As they are making lots of money, why are they wanting to have a decrease in taxes? And I don't understand. I don't think any of those companies, they all know what the taxes are. Every year they allocate funding for taxes. And I don't understand where this even came from, where we're actually looking at decreasing the value of these revenues. So we need to write a letter saying, point the finger at them. They're the ones that are benefiting. And I haven't seen any letter or any information going that way. We're being protective instead of aggressive. And I quite agree with Director Grenier. We need to look at ways of being more aggressive and pointing out that it's not the local taxpayers that are having the issues. It's companies that are making millions of dollars and are not prepared to share the benefits with our communities. And I don't know if we can have a sort of a different approach that way and point the finger at them instead of at the government for accepting it, or it's a concept that we haven't looked at.
Thank you. I have Directors O'Reilly, Onslow, Grenier, and Vice Chair Smith. Director O'Reilly.
I'll keep my commentary to a minimum, but then I have a couple suggestions on the motion that's in front of us. But I think, Chair Rodney said hold their feet to the fire. These people that come in promising things, this isn't the corporation so much, this is BC Assessments that's changing things on us. And where I really struggle is how many hours did we spend yesterday having to go through provisional budgets? And by law, we have to provide a 5-year financial plan to the provincial government. And then they change the rules of the game after we've done this within months to go, and that doesn't align whatsoever. And I think there needs to be pushback on that piece. And I think we also need to acknowledge that when we're talking about hits to residential taxpayers, and sure, that's one big component, but by default, it's everybody that's paying more, including our forestry sector, that's struggling already, and they are going to have to pick up more of a tax burden on an industry that's struggling throughout the entire region and other regions around us, and it's one more blow to them. And so just a couple of things that I would like to have added in here was that number that I believe Austin or CFO Fox had put out, but to the Thompson Regional Hospital District of a $300,000 hit. That's another form of taxation, and that's a hard number that should be included in there. But I do think this should also go directly to the finance minister and have all of the MLAs in the regions that are affected through REAs CC'd on this, so that it's a talking point, and not just for them. And why I think it's important to have Minister Bailey and frankly the Premier should be on there as well, is that that's our political channel. Staff have their staff to staff with the ADMs, and that's great, but we need to be able to have that political channel opened at the same time. So.
Can I just, I agree with what the director is saying, but we should also be CCing all of the pipeline people and point out directly to them the impact that they're having, because we're trying to make the provincial government responsible. We need to also share that information, the impact that they're having on us. I don't think they understand that. And whatever letters we write, we should be CCing all of the pipeline companies that are coming through our communities and make them understand exactly what the impacts are.
And just, I mean, I know you mentioned it's BC Assessment who made these changes, but it was BC Assessment who made the change after 9 years of consultation with all these pipeline companies who I'm sure were advocating for very much the result they got. Okay, Directors Onslow, Grenier, and then Vice Chair Smith.
Thank you very much. I appreciate Chair Roden that you just said it was the lobbying of these pipeline companies for the past 9 years. So they are fully aware of what they've done. I wanted to just say that I support Director Grenier's option of appealing or suggestion that we appeal to BC Assessment. And I don't know whether that has to be a motion to make that happen, but I would be prepared to support that, certainly, because I think that is another avenue that we should take. We should take every single avenue available to us as the board to try to stop this. So I guess looking for guidance on that.
Director Grenier?
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I was exactly the same thing, a motion, and my apologies to Director Lepso, because I know how he would like to have time to consider these things, but in the urgency of the situation, I'm just wondering something along this lines, a motion to staff to approach SILGA, UBCM, and other regional districts to consider filing an appeal of the BC assessment decision on pipeline reassessment. And I don't know if that should be perhaps attached to this or a separate motion or even deferred another meeting to satisfy everybody, but there's a start at it.
Okay. I think it should be a separate motion just to keep it clean. And since it looks like this motion, you know, if it goes through, the resulting letter is going to be CC'd to an awful lot of people. So I think keeping the appeal completely separate is cleaner. So I think Corporate Officer Jeremiah is nodding, so that's good. So maybe if you wanted to work on just kind of quietly drafting something, and we could maybe get it typed and get it up ready to go up after this one's dealt with. Okay, that works for you. We've got Vice Chair Smith and then Director Newstater.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question about whether or not that's reasonable to put them on notice and let them know that we will be appealing the decision. And maybe since the province doesn't seem to understand the impacts, maybe they need a mock a mock letter or a mock tax notice from some of the areas showing what it would have been and what it's going to be for them now, so they can have a little bit of an understanding, because they don't seem to. And I fully agree that it's not even acceptable. Like, there's places like Merritt and, you know, other areas that I'm looking at that can't take this on. Like, their people can't actually do this. I don't think, and especially not for the long term. I had an opportunity on Monday to meet with Enbridge. They've got a pipeline that runs right near Logan Lake. And we did, I had a meeting already planned. So I did bring it up at that meeting as well, just to let them know how serious the impacts really are for some of these communities. But I don't think unless we actually put it easily readable for them in black and white, I don't think they actually can fully grasp what that is. And the other thing is, I was going to say, just making sure that all of the MLAs are looped in. I don't think there is any social responsibility on the part of Trans Mountain in this at all. And it's frankly disgusting. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's, CAO Hildebrand.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that note, in talking to the CFO as well, including this analysis as an addendum to this letter that's going would be helpful as well. We've also kind of carved out a number of specific examples from all over the regional district where fire services are going to increase by double digit and all sorts of things that we could add as an addendum if you'd like, but just for your consideration.
Thank you. Yep. When the crafting this, I did have in mind some of these examples, and it was my intention to have them included. Things like the community of Little Fort. 2 services in Little Fort are the community hall and the fire protection services. The residential class participating in these services will see an increase of 28% and 28.5% in increased taxation for the service. So it was my intention to have instances and examples like this put in the letter that we send. Not just the big number of $1 million, but specific examples showing how this is going to hurt real services provided to real people in real communities.
Could we put that in dollars instead of percentages? Because 28% could be anything. We need to have the money that at the actual cost of 28%.
No, absolutely.
If I may just add as well, I think all these are great ideas, but the more time it takes us to get this letter out, I think time's of the essence where this letter needs to go out. Like, and that's the other, I guess, legislative issue is this is committee of the whole. I feel like we can still execute this today or tomorrow, or like get this done today before taking it back to the to the board. So we're going to need alignment from the board in order to do this, but time's of the essence, and the more research and data we put to it is going to take more time. So if we can be thoughtful on that.
All right, I've got Director Newstater. Oh, Corporate Officer Jeremiah.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to let everybody know that the Committee of the Whole allows the board to direct staff to action items. So we don't need to wait for a board approval to do this. We can continue to do this and then and action these requests.
All right, I've got Director Newstater. Anyone else? Director Middleton? Anyone else?
I just wanted a quick point to tell you that according to last year's appeal process, the deadline is the 31st of January.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Director Newstater, then Director Middleton.
I know we've talked about this for a long time. I think this is maybe also a future thought too, but the one conversation we haven't had is around the federal government. Right now, obviously pipelines, expanded pipelines, new pipelines is a major conversation across this country. When people express hesitation, it's usually around the environmental concerns, the land use concerns, those pieces. Usually it's spun as the major benefit is economic. I think it's really important and timely that we can raise this on the federal level as well to say this is an unacknowledged impact on local communities that shows up 2 years after completion or whatever it may be. I think it's really important that we include the federal government in these conversations too, to say, look, hesitation and resistance in communities for a pipeline is going to continue to grow and expand beyond what it is already, now that we are aware that we will be subsidizing these pipelines down the road through our communities and through our system. So I think that doesn't necessarily have to be now. I realize we're trying to action a lot of things quickly right before Christmas, but I do think it's something that we want to look at early in the new year to say we need the federal government to know that there will be a rising up for municipalities if this is the reality of what happens afterwards.
Thank you, Director Middleton.
Thank you. I'm not too sure, does the TNRD hold any either leases to the pipeline, right of ways, or anything where we could sort of physically say, hey, guess what? Access is going to cost you this much more now. Right of way is going to cost you this much more. Is if we're looking at a tax system that's going to allow them to pay less, and can we impede their access in any way, shape, or form? I'm not thinking of, setting up roadblocks or whatnot, but have we got a legal means to make it very difficult for them to run their business because we control some points of access, like say right of way or anything like that? Like, have we got another hammer that we can use to go back at them and, legally challenge things like right of ways and say leases that we have, and just say, the game has changed, we're changing too.
The only thing I could suggest is, I know yesterday we just extended 6 months on the for Trans Mountain for our space up in the North Thompson. But this truly is a BC assessment issue right now. So although those are all great ideas, we need to get that. I think that's the angle we need to go first, and get the Minister of Finance to stop this, delay this, reconsider this. But those are the things that may follow as well. Because I'm not sure reacting to, say, a pipeline organization right now makes sense, given that we need to deal with BC assessment first.
And just one quick supplemental, do we have any kind of an avenue or an opportunity to hand deliver that letter, or to actually get right in front of the minister to present it, rather than this going off into the void of correspondence that might take time to reach it? I know, legislature's not sitting right now, but does that prevent us from getting an actual face-to-face meeting and say, this is worth a flight to wherever, to sit right in front of the minister, present that case?
I think that's a great idea. I think we could do both. We can send it electronically immediately as soon as we get kind of what the board wants to say. We could send it by registered mail immediately as well. Given all the highways are closed, it's going to be tough to get there, but we'll figure out. We can do something to make it more expedient for sure. We'll fly Corbin there.
Director Laird.
Thank you, Chair. I do feel that the pipeline companies are, what do you call it? They're wanting to support communities. I don't think, in looking at it, I'm wondering if they even knew what the assessment authority was going to do. Basically, in our area, we had $1 million increase in revenues from pipelines, but now with the assessment authority has removed that $1 million. So basically, they've taken back what they gave us to start with for being good community supporters. And I think we have to respect and treat them as a strong community supporter. I'm a strong believer in a carrot instead of a stick. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bass.
Thinking like a reporter or a copy editor, including the pipeline management and telling the public that we have included them and having the appropriate rhetoric around it could fuel the media attention on this as well. And that just takes it right back to the public. And then you start to get a public groundswell. So I think you're right to want to get it done quickly, but at some point, we also need to bring in the fact that, hey, public, we're talking to the pipelines because look at how much money they made as per Director Grenier, but now they want you guys to pay their bills.
Director Blackwell, and then Director Getz. And
I have very little doubt that the pipeline companies would have lobbied for this if they didn't know they were going to get a huge financial win on it. This has, to my understanding, our issue has gone to the PMO office. I'm just trying to get confirmation of that, but I think we need to take this to all of our MPs as well and have them, walk it personally into the office as well. This is for Trans Mountain, this affects all pipelines. So talking to the mayor of Hope, he's got both Enbridge and Trans Mountain, so they're taking a double hit through their area, as is most of the Eastern Fraser Valley. I have a list that I compiled for somebody of the letters that I know, and I think there's 30 letters from 30 different jurisdictions. Some jurisdictions presenting more than one letter on this, based on the fact, like Blue River or Lee's area, that there was an individual letter beyond just the RD letter. We absolutely need to keep this in the media, especially if this what translates to the TNRD translates to other communities once BC assessment releases rolls. So, yeah.
Thank you. I've got Director Getz, and then Director Houghton.
Just an off thing like I normally bring. Would it be an idea to send this letter to the Premier of Alberta, considering she's talking about a pipeline coming through BC? And it might be a good idea for her to see what happens when the pipeline comes through. The other thing I think we should do is rent an old World War II B-52 bomber and do a bomb run of an info bomb like they used to do in the war when they shot all the leaflets out of the planes. Should do that over Victoria. Maybe that'll help.
Director Houghton.
Yeah, if there's something that I could take tomorrow, I'm meeting with Member of Parliament Mel Arnold tomorrow. If there's something I could hand deliver tomorrow, I'd gladly do it.
House doesn't sit.
Deo Hildebrand.
Chair Roden, so lots of great discussion. We're willing to kind of turn this around this afternoon with your direction. Another note that I had sent to the chair via text too was we can clip this meeting portion, like this topic, and this could be communicated widely to anybody you'd like, so they can hear everything firsthand. This is a public meeting, so it's on our website. It can be shared. So, I leave that up to you. But yeah, once we get this locked down on who we're copying, what the letter looks like, then we can kind of figure out the next kind of pathways to get this done today.
So I'm going to do one last pass around for contributions, and then Mr. Potts, did you have anything else to add? I suddenly had a sneaking suspicion that you had just paused in the course of your presentation and that there was more to come, and that, yes. So I'm relieved to know that you had reached a natural conclusion. If just maybe consider that for a moment while Mr. Vieira has a word.
Well, since you paused for final comment, I was actually just looking at an example tax notice for the TNRD, and I just wanted to highlight one thing that hasn't been mentioned. What Austin and Carla presented is the impact of the TNRD taxation and the TRHD. Keeping in mind that when people receive their property tax notice, there are other taxes there that are outside of the control of this board or the TRHD. So I'm looking at an example of a property in Blackpool that happens to have an annual tax bill of $3,000 last year. 2,000 of that was between the TNRD and TRHD, and 1,000 were provincial taxes on their property. So the province's own taxes are being redistributed this way. So that keep that in mind. That $1 million shift is only the TNRD portion. So of this property I'm looking at, 1/3 of that is also the provincial taxes. It's over and above what we mentioned here.
Director Onslow.
Yeah, to mention those, it's the school tax, rural property tax, and police tax are the three big line items that every municipality and the regional district residents see that are outside of our control.
And I'll just very quickly add, in Blue River, we have an improvement district that is also in charge of our fire department and streetlights, and they will be taxing more because of this as well. So we're getting hit really hard.
All right, so there was yesterday's pass at a resolution to come out of this. Do people feel it still meets the needs? I mean, obviously, it will be copied to a lot of people. We will include concrete dollar value impacts, not just percentages. Does someone want to move it? Director Blackwell, seconded by Director Sarai. Discussion.
Yeah, I think staff have listened to the conversation, can word this up a little bit and do the right attachments to this, but getting this out today, if at all possible, is essential.
No, I trust staff. They've obviously, I'm sure we're not saying anything they hadn't already thought of. But now that they know the will of the board, they know what we want to focus on. I'm sure that they can craft something that is going to be precisely what we want, and they get it done this afternoon. Okay, any other questions, discussion, comments? All right, on the motion, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. And then Director Grenier, you have a motion?
I do, Chair. I think we're ready to put it up on the screen now. That the committee directs staff to work with SILGA, UBCM, and other local governments to prepare an appeal of the proposed BC assessment changes to the valuation of pipeline utility class.
Thank you. Director Smith moves, seconded by Director Houghton. Discussion. No discussion? All right, on the motion then, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Spirited. And welcome to Mr. Kelly. Glad to see you here. Whether you're glad to be here or not, we will leave between you and your conscience. But you are here to talk to us about advocacy realignment. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and through to the board. As we enter into the last, I guess it's less than a year now, of this board's term, just wanting to ensure that there is some clear direction to myself and other members of staff in terms of what are the key priorities, key advocacy priorities that the board wants us to continue with. And I say this as we begin to plan, and obviously the fulsome conversation that was had here a few minutes ago around the pipeline reevaluation, and is that a potential topic? It's not listed as a possible topic on my report, but I do leave it open for direction from the board for other topics, whether it's the pipeline reevaluation or something else. There's certainly some flexibility there. To date, we've had a lot of success in the way that we've changed the approach to advocacy that the TNRD takes through our advocacy tours down to Victoria. We've had 2 of them so far. We're looking at another one in early 2026 to kind of line up with pre-UBCM, and then hopefully UBCM can kind of cap everything off before we go into the local government election and a new board is sworn in. So with that in mind, just wanting to make sure that, you know, we have a clear direction, that there are 3 priorities, and I use 3 because for the last 3 years, there's been about 7 priorities that we've had ongoing. In the report, it talks about a lot of the successes of those different priorities. Emergency egress route planning is one of them. Highway safety is another one where you know, it's gotten that sort of ministerial direction and staff are now able to work on it. And it's not as big of a priority in the sense of political advocacy and the needed push from the board. With that being said, there's of course still topics that you know, we took down to Victoria earlier in the month, or maybe it was the end of November. the weeks are blurring together here now as we get close to the holidays, but small water utility system funding, highway safety, specifically relating to the out of province ticket enforcement. I know that the Ministry of Transportation has been really good when it comes to infrastructure improvements in our region, in terms of being able to work directly with district staff on a lot of those. There's obviously still topics that fall in that file that haven't been actioned yet. Invasive species management funding, consistent letters have been sent from the Invasive Plant Management Committee, but there's an opportunity, if it's the will of the board, to kind of increase the work that we're doing there. And as well, the Agricultural Land Commission, those have always been, it's been a challenge, to say the least, trying to move that file forward. And then as well, healthcare delivery, and that's more related to the hospital district. But just wanting to flag that that's likely still something that we'll need to keep at the top of our agenda going forward into 2026. So those are kind of high level topics that have been worked on over the last 3 years, and wanting to make sure that there's direction from the board again, that what out of those or others that you think of are what are going to be the top 3, and having a motion of what those will be, so that there's some clear concrete steps that can be taken, and making sure that 2026 is as successful as it can be when it comes to advocacy for the region.
Thank you. I have Director Sarai already on the list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Corbin, for all the great work, and other municipalities and our RDOs look at the advocacy that you actually take to Victoria and get results. Just on the past topic, we just talked about BC assessment. I think the board will agree. I think that should be our top priority right now. Make that number 1 with the board's will, and then I'm willing to hear the other directors in the areas what the other 2 would be. But I think right now that is our main concern as a taxation hit that is hitting all of us. Need a seconder to make that number 1, or just a friendly suggestion?
We're looking for 3, so I think we'll put that as number 1, and then we'll see what else comes up. We've got Director Houghton, Director Onslow, and Director Thorpe.
I'll just throw, probably Director Grenier will agree with me. Sounds like you're getting somewhere with small water utilities. So on an EA side, I would say that would be a very important one.
Thank you. Director Onslow.
I'd like to add to the list to ask that the laws be upheld on provincial land. And I know Director Morris has been having problems with Crown land and occupation of illegal encampments. I have my tiny house warriors, and we just, as the TNRD, have no ability to remove people or uphold the laws. And I would think that that is advocacy that we need to continue to ensure that the province is upholding their laws.
Director Thorpe.
Okay, I'd actually like to add invasive species management funding to this, because I think that affects our whole region. I would agree with the water. And I do think we need to work with to deal with the pipeline issues. So I think I think the healthcare is really important, but I think we can deal with that under the Regional Hospital Board. So those would be my 3 at the moment, please.
Director Newstater, and then Director Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just in the interest of this particular exercise, I think these 5 were identified for like ongoing long-term advocacy strategies. Of course, I passionately agree about the pipeline issue, but I think the nature advocacy is essentially a comms exercise, like a specified comms exercise. And so there's always going to be a living portion of it where these things come forward in real time, unexpected things. That is the nature of it. But I think, if I understand right, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're looking for kind of the longer, I guess we only have 1 year left in our term, but you are looking for those larger overreaching areas as opposed to us identifying emergency advocacy items, right? So although I agree right now, top of mind certainly is the pipeline piece. Can I just confirm with staff, but what you're looking at is these are the 5 that have risen to the top the most. You're looking to identify 3 top priorities from this list, not just throwing stuff at the wall. What do we want and what's currently on fire?
Yeah, thank you through the chair to Director Newstater. Yes. And, recognizing that there will always be emerging issues. And I think that, the pipeline issue is a good example of that where, it's kind of 2 tracks, right? Is that how much are staff actually able to do on certain topics? And the pipeline would be a good example of that. And I say staff as in provincial staff. What are provincial staff actually able to do versus what needs to be, more political level advocacy. And so I think that's also the difference is that for a lot of these files is that they can be moved forward with ministerial direction and worked at more fulsomely at a staff level, whereas the pipeline reevaluation is something that is inherently political and there's really no decision-making authority that's left with provincial staff. So that would also be the difference. So I think that, yes, we can highlight that the pipeline reevaluation is a top priority. And when we go back to Victoria in 2026, if, depending on where it goes, it can again be a topic that we bring forward. But that the idea is that I'd like 3 topics that I can work on over the next year, essentially, and be able to get somewhere with staff as well, with the chair and ministers.
So supplemental, if I can. I would maybe suggest then that the items that I've seen rise to the top the most, and I agree with Director Thorpe, that healthcare delivery is obviously extraordinarily important, but it does live within its own space as well for advocacy. So I think we can remove that. I'd suggest that number 1, number 3, and number 4 are probably your highest priorities from these lists, because that's, to my mind, what's been discussed most and brought forward most from this table overall, as well as UBCM discussions.
Thank you, Director Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Not to dwell on this BC assessment thing any longer, because I know we're all pretty well sick of it, but according to AI, it's a provincial crown corporation that reports to the Ministry of Finance, which oversees its mandate and budget. So as far as I'm concerned, that's the guys that we got to beat up.
Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. Small water, we've been moving this forward, moving this ball forward at every UBCM. I think we're gaining traction. They've asked us for the information that we have just prepared and ready to go. So I would hate to lose the initiative on small water. And it's interesting because when we first started up, we didn't have gravel roads on the agenda and we were sort of up in the air on telecom, but we are making progress on those things. So I'm not suggesting that they be added to the list, but just want your confirmation that we're continuing on with those other initiatives. They're not going by the wayside, but the focus on your ball is sort of on this list right now, small waters and some of these other ones for consideration. But I just want to say we're really making progress, and I think we're about to maybe get our small water fund if we keep going. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments? And I mean, I think the difference would be that the cellular conversation does involve people who aren't in government. Obviously, it involves the telcos. But, these ones, if we went with 1, 3, and 4, these are all purely provincial government matters. Anyone else have any questions, comments, input, suggestions, ideas? And this does not preclude anything being added. I mean, the Tiny House Warriors was something that we added at the last moment to our recent meeting in Victoria and seemed to be productive. I wish one of us had taken a picture of the Premier's face when, what did you say, Mr. Kelly, exactly? What were your words? And the Premier's face was,
I'm going to blush now that I have to say it. It's I said that the province didn't have the political will to remove the Tiny House Warriors. His jaw was on the table.
he was not expecting to hear that. So, but it's good. I mean, the blunt talking, maybe he doesn't hear a lot of blunt talk. Maybe he does. I have no idea. No, possibly not. I think it was from an unexpected source. It took him aback, certainly. So, Director Sarai?
Yeah, just one more thing on the recommendations here. I know that we had a letter yesterday from UBCM that they accepted the highway safety resolution from TNRD. Does that mean that we can sort of let off that gas pedal and let them take it on? Or is that something that we should still be on top of them? Just want some more information on that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Director Sarai, and through the chair. I would say that it's something that should probably continue to be talked about, but that it's not something that we would necessarily need to request a meeting with the Ministry of Transportation 3 more times to discuss it. It's also worth noting that MLA Stamer has a private member's bill that is also in regard to highway safety and more specifically highway dash cams on commercial vehicles. So there's other work that's being done in and around that file that is continuing it to move forward.
Director Bass. Okay. I had some duff intelligence here. All right, Director Thorpe.
Okay, so could I make a motion then that we prioritize, just a minute, I need to get back into my screen, small water systems, agricultural land commission, and invasive species management funding for the next year, but that as an emerging issue, we also deal with the pipeline assets.
Okay, thank you. Someone like to second that? Second by Director Newstater. Discussion. Questions, comments? All right, on the motion, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of our Committee of the Whole meeting, our last official meeting of 2025. It has been a pleasure, a privilege, and an honor to be with you all throughout 2025. I would invite you to stay for the Staff Long Service Awards and Luncheon, which is going to be served here in approximately 20 minutes. And I will just leave you with some words by Mr. Christmas himself, Charles Dickens. This is not from A Christmas Carol. It's from one of his lesser-known works called The Seven Poor Travelers. And in it, Charles Dickens wrote, "Christmas comes but once a year, which is unhappily too true. For when it begins to stay with us the whole year round, we shall make this world a very different place." So, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to all of you.